Has rejected an appeal against a 5-year prison sentence given to a woman with dual British and Iranian citizenship. Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, a charity worker, has been accused of security offences. She was detained whilst trying to leave the country with her baby daughter after visiting relatives in April. Joining me now is Nazanin's husband, Richard Ratcliffe. Richard, you must be devastated by this.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, obviously the first sentence was the first 5 years, and we lived in hope that it would change at the appeal. And the longer time went between when we had the appeal and when the verdict came, obviously you start to get uncertain and unsure.
How long was that?
18 days, so about 3 weeks ago the appeal happened. The appeal happened on January the 4th.
But in secret?
Secret appeal, yeah, secret court. So there were lots of judiciary and revolutionary guard there, and Nazanin was there with her lawyer, but no one else was allowed to watch.
What are the accusations against her?
Well, there have been different ones at different points, and what came through, I mean, there was crazy stuff at the beginning about her being involved in the overthrow of the regime and so on. What came through in this hearing was two new ones for the first time. One was that she was the head of recruitment for BBC Farsi, and the other was that she was the wife of a known British spy, meaning me.
Which are you?
Both of which are not true. Yeah, so I mean, both of which are crazy. Both of which are completely not true. So Nazanin, works at Thomson Reuters Foundation. If you go back far enough, she did once work for the BBC charity, BBC Media Action, for a year. She was a project assistant. Not some big, great, important role. And equally, yeah, I mean, as I understand, the reason why they were accusing her of being married to a spy was because of the media campaign that I've been doing and the fact that there was 500 pages in her file of media coverage that we'd done. So protesting your innocence is what proves your guilt.
Is there anything that you can put your finger on that may have led to her arrest at all, initially?
No. I mean, I think it's probably the fact that she has media connections. So the fact that she works for a charity that, does media training, doesn't do it in Iran, but nonetheless, it's the sort of organisation that could do. I think that was what got her in, and thereafter they've just tried to make up stories, and the stories keep changing, and it feels like they're making up as they go along.
Take us back to the day when this happened.
So,
it was with your baby daughter?
Yeah, so that's right. So they'd gone on holiday for Easter, which is also Iranian New Year, had a 2-week trip, and they were on the way back. So I was due to go down to Gatwick to pick them up at the airport, and I got a phone call to say, she didn't catch the flight, so don't go. And didn't really worry about it too much at the time. They said there was a passport problem. And then as the days went on and it was sort of clear that she'd been taken in for questioning and it wasn't clear where she was or who'd got her, and it was weeks before it was confirmed that it was the Revolutionary Guard that had her and that she was down in Karaman, obviously that was terrifying. And the fact that I'd been sort of sitting, waiting, presuming it would all work out fine and hadn't done anything was hard when I realised that, gosh, what she'd been through and what had I done about it.
Where was your daughter at this point?
So obviously she was at the check-in desk as well, and she got given back to her grandparents who were there to see Nazanin off. So since that point she's been living with her grandparents, and obviously very traumatic at the beginning. She'd been there for 2 weeks, but she didn't know them that well and couldn't speak Farsi. But now, of course, after 10 months, her Farsi is pretty much fluent, and there's a way in which her granny is now her surrogate mum.
How old is she?
She's 2.5. Yeah.
And how often do you get to see her?
Well, I've not seen her physically, obviously, since this happened. In terms of sort of on Skype, we probably have Skype calls, not every evening, but most evenings. And as she's getting older, she's beginning to ask questions about what's. She's still young enough to live in the moment, really. But yeah. What
sort of help have you had, particularly from the Foreign Office here?
I've gone through phases, and in fairness, at points I've been quite critical of the support. I think they've always been personally very decent. There are obviously a wider considerations in the policy with Iran that has meant that they've been quite cautious in how they've handled things. They've never called for her release. They've never criticised, the way the Iranian government is treating her or Gabriella. So I've had my frustrations, and there have been times when I've put that bluntly in public and in private. I think the Foreign Office is quite secretive always in what it does, so one never knows how much more they're doing or not doing.
Have you attempted to go to Iran?
I'm trying to get a visa, which is proving to be very complicated. I sent a letter to President Rouhani last week, actually asking for his help in getting a visa to go and to be able to see Nazanin and Gabriella. So that's one of the next things to try.
And is the baby taken to visit your wife? Can she see her? Can she have visitors?
Yeah, so it's gone through phases, and sometimes it's closed off, sometimes not, and around trial times it's much more closed off. So, but actually, just back in the autumn, Nazanin got very, very low, and she was suicidal and went on hunger strike. And then there were many more visits that were allowed after that. At the moment, one of the things the Revolutionary Guard is doing is saying, listen, we don't want to give back the passports. They've confiscated Gabriella's passport.
So you can't bring her home?
So we can't bring her home at this point formally. They don't want to give it back, and they've said that's because we know the British government is going to take away Gabriella. So to protect the baby foot so that Nazanin can see her, that's the rhetoric that they're using. So obviously they allow visits to be able to sustain that story.
And have you been able to talk to your wife?
So occasionally, yes. And in fact, I had a phone call last week.
How is she?
She this is before this had happened. But yeah, she was angry. So they just had a family visit where they'd been made to wait for 2 hours to have. So there's no one else in the waiting room. They're made to wait on both sides to have it. And one of the things now she's moved to the general cell. She's been able to knit a cardigan for Gabriella. She'd wanted to give the cardigan, and that had been banned. So there's sort of little petty cruelties. But the fact that she was angry was a good sign. She was a bit stronger.
What happens now? Is that the end of the judicial process in Iran, or is there any more you can do?
I think there's a Supreme Court stage that you could do that takes a very long time. So practically that probably is all that we can do, and apart from a sort of a 2 or 3 year court process.
Just a final thought. How are you coping?
Yeah, so today's a tough day, and last week we had a candlelit vigil, which was a nice chance. Lots of people came and caring, and that was quite supportive. It's obviously very up and down, and I find the more I keep going and well, so try and keep battling and not feel too much what we're going through, the easier it is. And
not just being separated from your wife, but your little baby as well.
Yeah, and watching her grow up. I mean, she's quite different from how she was when she went.
Richard, thank you very much for coming in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to the weather. John Hammond has all the details for us.